When it comes to Honkai Star Rail lore, who are the strongest characters in the game, and what makes them so strong? And much like my other video for Genshin Impact on the same topic, there's going to be a criteria and a few things to consider. Obviously, their brute strength and raw power is important when talking about the strongest characters, but there are a lot of other variables to consider. The character's circumstance, age, potential, their temperament, and some characters have pretty game-changing and unique abilities that might give them the edge. It's really hard to subjectively state what actually makes a character powerful, especially for this game. It's a lot harder than Genshin Impact because the world of Honkai Star Rail is much more vast and much more technologically advanced, with a lot of characters that have insane gimmicks. And for that reason, this list is not going to be, and I repeat, not going to be in any specific order, because I feel there is no real tangible way to actually compare characters against each other because there's so much we still don't know, and so many different variables. But ironically, I'm going to start with the character that I feel has a very strong claim to be the strongest character in the entire game as of right now, Acheron, who is an emanator of nihility. Naturally, any character that's an emanator could easily have a spot in this video, and we will be talking about some others. But when it comes to Acron, her abilities are hard to pinpoint and her power almost seems infinite. She's the emanator of a black hole, Aeon, that represents endless nothingness. And we've seen that she can defy the laws of time and reality to an extent, being somewhat immune to any kind of manipulation in Penacony, being absurdly overpowered when it comes to raw strength against other opponents. And when you realize what a self-annihilator and the people associated with nihility have to endure, it's kind of terrifying how dialed in Acron actually is. It's almost like she revels into the infinite endless shadow of nihility. And because nihility doesn't actually reach out to other mortals or beings, is her power that she can draw from this Aeon even being regulated? It's hard to really say exactly, but she sliced through the dreamscape with ease. The entire quest in Penacony might have gone a lot different if Acron was not present, and it almost seems that she can slow down time in a way. Her powers might genuinely be limitless for all we know, or that we can comprehend. Now, in my last video, I explained in greater detail how Acron became an emanator of nihility when that should be impossible. But long story short, she could very well represent the absolute worst case scenario for any Raiden export characters. And with her tragic backstory, really does make her the perfect candidate to fully embrace the nihility and face it head on, almost reveling in it. Not to mention, her sword that she wields is like the Honkai Star Rail version of a divine key made from the dead remains of a Hera, godlike individuals from Honkai Impact 3rd. But Acheron's sword was made from the remains of dead Kame, who are gods or deities in Honkai Star Rail. So to put a cherry on top of her already immense power, she has a really powerful weapon as well. I could go on and on about this character and how she has a strong claim to be the strongest character in the entire game, but I don't think I'm going to get too many objections from you guys that she is definitely up there as one of the strongest characters without a doubt. We all know the 10 Stonehearts are immensely powerful. They all have unique abilities and different character traits and strengths, but they all get their strength and power from one individual who is an emanator of one of the oldest Aeons preservation, Diamond, who is an executive at the IPC. Obviously that the Stonehearts get their cornerstones and immense power granted from Diamond himself. I am very curious and intrigued when we'll finally actually meet Diamond in game and in person. But there's no denying that if you have 10 very renowned strong individuals working under you, you're not to be trifled with or taken lightly. The commanding officer of the Stellaron Hunters, Kafka, who is a threat to your planet wherever you're from. Physically and combatively, she's insanely powerful, and she's cunning, intelligent, almost has a near perfect mind for this sort of thing. I really can't find a flaw within her mentally that would give her a disadvantage, which makes her that much more dangerous. But what really makes her the most dangerous is her crazy gimmick, the Spirit Whispers, that give her mind control to an extent. So what would really make or break this character is the extent as she can control people. I think somebody like Acheron would be somewhat immune to this, seeing as that she was pretty immune in Penacony in the Dreamscape. But if she gets control over you, that's it, you're finished. And that is despite her incredible strength already. This also makes her the perfect person to lead the Stellaron Hunters in the field because All of the Stellar Hunters have unique and incredible gimmicks, abilities, and strength of their own, so being able to keep tabs on them and control them if she needs to makes her the perfect person that Elio would recruit. Pairing this with her insane mental strength herself and how incredibly diverse and creative she could be with this ability, oh, it's terrifying to think about. So naturally, I feel that somebody who's able to help restrain Kafka, you could debate whether Kafka was allowing this or not, but Fuan and her ability of foresight deserves a spot on this list alone because it's an incredibly unique gimmick. Being able to foresee things is definitely useful, as we saw her do some Quicksilver shit with these bullets that Kafka fired, and that is precisely her duty on the Law Fu, to help predict future events using her powers of foresight. I don't think that she's nearly as powerful as somebody like obviously Elio when it comes to foresight and scripts and things like that, but in terms of the Star Rail universe and different characters, I definitely think she's up there with this ability. Like I said, certain characters are hard to gauge how immensely powerful they could potentially be, but I cannot make this video without talking about Hera, who is a known emanator of erudition, the eon of utter intelligence and knowledge, which makes Hera's potential power and abilities almost limitless, and we have yet to actually meet Hera in game. Seeing as that the one that we see on the Hera space station is just a puppet she uses so that she can somewhat be present there to help organize and run the ship and all of its affairs. Her creation and studies in the simulated universe, as well as her knowledge on almost anything to do with Honkai Star Rail, is insane. And although it's hard to gauge how she would compare to other characters, it's impossible to say that she wouldn't be immensely powerful and have a solution for almost any situation. At her full strength with her real body, if she even has one, we have yet to see her in game. But there's no denying that Hera deserves a spot in this video. Just making this list without even being an emanator is a feat and an accomplishment on its own. And Sam the Stellaron Hunter, who we now know as Firefly, is a living weapon, was created by the Glamoth Iron Cavalry to fight back the Swarm, one of the few civilizations that was actually successful in defeating the Swarm. And although Sam is one of the best exterminators in the galaxy, with immense power in combat and strength, and a near flawless soldier, she does have her limits, and one of her greatest weaknesses is that she was created to follow, to take orders, which does sort of limit her own ability to make really important and on-the-fly decisions. Not to say that she can't, but she was created more as a soldier to take orders. And even if Acron wasn't going all out, there is something to be said about going toe-to-toe with an emanator of nihility. And although one of her weaknesses might be making her own decisions and thinking for herself, she's fearless and ultra-aggressive, which means she'll have minimal hesitation when it comes to actually fighting. It's heavily implied that the Arbiter Generals of the Law Fu are all pretty well emanators of the Hunt, and I feel like they probably all have their own strengths. Being a general meaning that your primary duty is to actually lead, be the general, command and delegate. It's a huge responsibility. Yes, you need to be physically strong and have crazy strong abilities, but you're mostly there to command your flagship. So I could make a claim for all of them being on this list in their own unique ways, with their own unique abilities. But because we don't know most of them, I'm going to focus on the two that we know the most about, Genuin and Feixiao. I think Feixiao might actually be the strongest general in combat physically, because she is in her prime, and she has a reputation to be known for this. She is also the most relentless of the generals in the field, hunting down the denizens of abundance without hesitation, and she sort of revels in it. She's confident, cunning, she almost has no weaknesses when it comes to combat, even giving her the nickname the Merlin's Claw. She's also got the reflexes, the quick wit, and the agility of a Foxian, but also has some blood of the Borisin in her as well, and their strength. Her only main weakness is that she doesn't have as long of a lifespan as the other Foxians because of her ailment and condition, which she's trying to treat right now on the Law Fu. Then we have Genuin, who we know is powerful, we've seen in game. But something about Genuin that gets overlooked is people dub him as lazy in game. But you notice that his playable path is erudition, which I know for a fact some people thought was strange, but it actually makes sense because he's known to solve problems before they even happen. He's one of the senior generals and he's good at anticipating problems, dealing with them in advance, and coming up with solutions before it escalates, which means he's quick thinking and good at thinking ahead, planning. He's not someone to overlook a detail or rush into a situation, which means he might even have a good hand or chance at dealing with somebody who might even be more powerful than he is. And I do feel he is quite underestimated. Welt himself even stating that the Arbiter Generals and Fantia are on the same playing field to an extent, also hinting that they might be emanators of the hunt as well. Speaking of Fantia, I feel it's worth stating now that pretty well all of the emanators of destruction could make a claim in this video, but I'm going to focus on Fantia because that's the one we know the most about, who also associates with the abundance. And it took a pretty powerful crew of people to even weaken and defeat her, not even kill her outright. Plus, she has an insane gimmick that allows her to possess different individuals, and she is the strongest of the Hilibus. Nanook recruits individuals who have unique aspects of destruction, and they saw her as a shoo-in. Fantia is definitely one of the strongest characters in this game, without a doubt, and I honestly doubt we've seen the last of her. What makes her also even more dangerous, despite her immense power, is she could be attacking you or your planet right now and you won't even know it till it's too late. Silverwolf is not somebody that you would think at first glance is somebody worth being in this video or immensely powerful, because honestly, in raw power and strength, I don't think she actually is, compared to the average mortal or pathstrider for sure. But to make this video, what really elevates her is her unique ability. That is honestly sort of a MacGuffin at this point for a writing standpoint. Her ability allows the writers of this game to buff or nerf her at will. She has the ability to alter and hack reality, called ether editing, which is insane. How do you even gauge that? I actually have an entire video talking about this ability because it honestly breaks the game. If you can hack reality, it means you can change the rules that make up life in the universe. Reality is a pretty broad term, so the writers would almost have to nerf her to oblivion to make her not too overpowered, if I'm being honest, because it's hard to gauge exactly what all this entails. How much of reality can you change and hack to your will? She has no problem messing with the IPC or any really dangerous faction, and Elio himself sought her out because of this. And her only real weakness, and her glaring weakness really, is that she's an immature teenager that probably doesn't take things too seriously. Her motives, her goals, her ambitions are a little bit more short-sighted. Like, if you can mess with the Intelligentsia Guild, Hera, Screwlum, the Simulated Universe, the IPC, and all these crazy factions, just because, if you can orchestrate the Antimatter Legion attacking the space station, hunt down and deal with Stellarons and all of the above, you're not somebody to be trifled with. And being that she's one of the smartest people in the entire game, if she was ever to perfect her ether editing ability, whew, look out. And her power is solely determined by how far the writers are willing to go with it. Speaking of Elio, who could very well be either an emanator or the finality Eon itself, he has next level powers of foresight and scripts. How do you honestly defeat somebody who can predict the future and what's going to happen? We have no way to gauge his actual power, but this alone means that he's going to be an incredibly hard foe to deal with if he can anticipate anything that's going to happen. Not to mention he has a loyal band of Stellaron hunters. He definitely has a possibility to be one of the strongest characters in this entire game. But how he would compare to Acron is kind of interesting because she seems to be able to bend time itself, so I don't know exactly how they would measure up against each other. We would need to know more about Elio and his other abilities before we could make that comparison. Maybe he could travel to the past and defeat her that way before she's born. We don't know. Can he change the rules and bend it that much? So I'm gonna leave it at that. Another character that could potentially be the most powerful character in the game is us, the main MC, who has a Stellaron in our body. Pretty well confirmed to be a former Stellaron hunter, but for some reason our memories got taken away and we got a Stellaron placed within our body. Now if Elio can predict the future and has scripts and can foresee things, I think it can at least be assumed that he wants us to collect the gaze of each path we now have, the destruction, preservation, and the harmony. If we are collecting paths like Infinity Stones, are we going to be the ultimate emanator, or are we literally on a path to become an Eon? Elio's confirmed to be trying to prevent the destruction of the universe, and if he already foresaw what's going to happen, I think it's safe to assume that we were either associated with Elio before, or we were the only one that could be trusted to foresee this mission, ultimately to save the universe. And if we are collecting every path on our way, to become a being so strong that can actually prevent this. I think that easily earns us a spot as one of the strongest characters in the entire game. And the crazy part is, we probably have the highest potential out of anyone. Will we be an emanator of every path and in turn maybe even become an Eon? Maybe that's why the Stellaron was placed within our body. Also, on my last video talking about Acron, somebody interestingly pointed out in the comments that, will something terribly bad have to happen to our main MC if we do gain the gaze of Nihility somehow? And how would this even go about? It is very interesting and only time will tell. Welt Yang, who is an imposter and in the wrong game. He is from Honkai Impact 3rd that decided to jump over and help Himiko. He is a former Herrscher of Reason, an immensely powerful individual in the Honkai Impact games. He also carries around a divine key, the Star of Eden, who Acron even noted to be a black hole of seemingly endless possibilities. Welt also spent years fighting the Honkai in his own game, and we have not even seen him break a sweat just yet. He no longer has his Herrscher powers, but with his sheer experience and his secret weapon that he carries, he is also somebody that could potentially claim that top spot. But he's definitely regardless a shoo-in for this video. It almost seems like he has to hold himself back. I really do hope we get to see soon what this guy's capable of. And although he's not a Herrscher anymore, having and controlling that power is nothing to scoff at. I think we can clump Blade and Hule. Both of them are struck by Mara and are more or less immortal, which is already a crazy gimmick, not being able to die. But both have been defeated by literally the same character. Blade and Hule have been defeated by Jinglu, who could potentially be the most powerful in pure combat and strength in the Shanzhou alliance that we've ever seen, and she is even Mara struck now. She's also the one who trained Genuin, one of the most senior Arbiter generals, and we already know he's incredibly powerful, so obviously how can she not be in this video? She's probably the most flawless warrior that we've seen in the game so far, from a pure combat standpoint. I honestly think it would take an incredibly crazy gimmick to take her down. I don't think you're gonna best her in a duel or in a straight up fight. As for Blade, she's beat him multiple times. Dongheng's also killed and defeated Blade multiple times as well. We know that Sam, aka Firefly, also subdued Blade in order to recruit him, so that guy's catching L's a lot. I love his character, and he's definitely powerful and he's skilled, but if he didn't have the gimmick of being immortal, this guy would have been dead like thousands of times already. So this is less me including him in this video and more so explaining why he isn't, for those that might be pissed off at me, and I'm sure I'll hear about it in the comments, but yeah, he's caught quite a few L's so far. Thank God he's immortal. I think Kaeya's worth a mention. It took a lot to take her down, the Astral Express and some members from Belobog, and it took us getting the gaze of a second Eon Preservation to help finally defeat her, as well as Himiko helping us from the Astral Express. Kaeya was the supreme leader of Belobog and has some insane control over ice. But it's her corrupted powers from the Stellaron and the Fragmentum that gave her some extra power, that ultimately made her dangerous and having the power to destroy the world. Obviously, I think there's a lot more powerful characters than her, but I do think she deserves a spot in this video. Now, I have nothing against religion, but Sunday's like that annoying guy that's ultra obsessed and his power seems to come from his belief of order, and even somewhat hijack the power of the harmony in the Grand Theater to create an embryo of order. But it's really hard to power scale him, honestly, like him specifically, because most of his abilities and his power comes from his tuning ability. Was he basically an emanator of the order at this point, or is that a bit too far to say? Definitely worth a mention, but I don't know how I would power scale Sunday specifically. And that is essentially going to wrap up the video on the strongest characters in Honkai Star Rail. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did I miss somebody you felt deserved a spot? Maybe I missed a detail, or maybe there's a character that shouldn't have been on this list. There are a few characters that I want to include or thought about, like some members of the Masked Fools, some other emanators that we have tiny details on, like the other emanator of the IPC that I actually think might be an emanator of Ouroboros, but I felt that there's not a lot of details on these characters to really make a strong claim. The Masked Fool seem to use more trickery than anything, and the other emanators we know next to nothing about. So I mean, obviously there's some potential there, but again, this is just meant to be fun, to go over some of the strongest characters, talk about their different abilities, and even speculate on them a little bit. I do hope you enjoyed the video though. If you'd like to see more content like this, like and subscribe, help grow the channel. I really do appreciate you all watching this far, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.